this spiral of violence continues. What do you make of this?
What I make of it is that the violence that we're seeing at the moment is, put in place and encouraged by the fact that there is so little knowledge and understanding of what is going on in Palestine and the crimes that are being committed there every day. If, like me, you know people in Palestine, you know journalists working in Palestine, you know human rights organizations working there, your newsfeed every day will be full of videos of Israeli troops harming civilians, killing children often. We know that 6,400 Palestinians have been killed since 2008 by IDF
nothing
forces.
Justifies the scale of this.
By saying, oh, let's condemn the man in the cellar. Yes, condemn the man in the cellar, but condemn the person who kicked him out as well.
You have to look at what is in the best interest of innocent Palestinians that are not reacting in this way. I'm not disputing the fact that obviously there is a lot wrong with the situation between Israel and Palestine. But the idea that, by murdering 700 Israeli citizens...
900 now.
Well, 900 now. You're inherently acting in the best interest of innocent Palestinians, who I've often said, I'm horrified by their plight. Over half of the population of Palestine is under the age of 25. An entire generation, this is all they've ever known.
The problem is Hamas are...
The Israeli government, that if you continue to allow Israeli settlers to murder Palestinians, this will cause a security threat. And now people are saying, well, this is intelligence failure.
It's chicken and the egg. I just don't think anyone on a day like this can start getting into the other stuff so quickly before you say, this is disgusting.
What makes me so sad, Piers, is that, of course it's disgusting, but there are so many abuses and violations and just horrible. An Israeli child shot in the back, running away from Israeli forces after he'd been throwing rocks. That literally just happened recently. Documented by Human Rights Watch. Nowhere you see that in the media. Nowhere.
Because Iran clearly funded.
Well, Iran is clearly funding a lot of this.
Exactly. So where was their responsibility?
We've done a lot of the show on this issue.
Defensive position and saying, what would you do if these people were firing upon you? The problem with that logic is that begins with Palestinian resistance as opposed to Israeli occupation. If you begin from the place of Israeli occupation and you talk about Palestinian resistance to that, then suddenly the question should be, what would you do if you're Israel and you're an apartheid state and you're an occupying force? That to me is the more fundamental question here. And again, I'm not, and let me hold on, Alan, and hold on, Alan, and hold on, Alan, please. And once again, I'm not defending the killing of innocent children. I'm not defending breaking of ceasefires. I'm not suggesting that Hamas is above critique. I'm not pro-Hamas. I'm anti-occupation, and that's a very different conversation. And that's what the United Nations is attempting to do.
Apartheid states, you're engaging in bigotry. Look, I fought against apartheid. I was part of the legal team for Nelson Mandela. I know what apartheid is. How dare you call Israel an apartheid state? Arabs and Jews worked together, lived together, served in the Knesset together. The Gaza was emptied of all occupation in 2005 and 2007.
I hope I get a chance to respond.
Israel left behind all of the greenhouses. Hamas turned them into terrorist rockets. Shame on you for calling Israel an apartheid state. Well, you have become part of the problem, not part of the solution, Mark.
Well, your moral censure aside, I'd like to respond to that. First of all, if you look right now, there's first, second, and third class citizenship for Israelis versus Arab Israelis and Palestinian Israelis. Excuse me, Arab Israelis and Palestinians.
Please, Alan, let Mark respond.
I'll just waiting for him. Are you done? Thank you, sir. If you're talking about occupation ending in 2005, right now Gaza is still controlled by land, by air, by sea. Israel still has a blockade. Israel still controls the population registry. Israel still controls the electromagnetic sphere. Israel still controls movement. Israel still controls the entering and leaving for Palestinians. It still controls the construction of supplies. It still controls the water, the food that comes in. It still controls the economy. Palestinians have not had one.
Will you condemn Palestinians who commit terror attacks against Israelis? We're saying it all the time. You should say it in Arabic, not in English. You should teach in your schools. You should stop the hatred. You should stop naming streets after terrorists. Look at the squares in Ramallah. Look at the streets in Jenin. You're naming streets after terrorists. Hebrew, in English, in Arabic.
We condemn the killing of all innocent civilians, including Palestinian civilians. Do you do the same?
You're paying them. You're paying the families of the terrorists.
Do you do the same?
You're glorifying terrorism. Shame on you for doing that.
We don't.
Shame on you for glorifying terrorism.
Shame on you for killing
thousands
of Palestinian
children. For not saying we condemn all acts of terror, period. To say.
You cannot
You are
say
being
that
translated into
civilians.
5 languages. You can say it right now. We condemn all acts of terror.
我请以色列代表继续他的发言。
Then the question then becomes again about proportion. I don't disagree that there's been a lot of bad stuff on both sides going back historically for decades. But if we agree that this was on a different level altogether, quite deliberately by Hamas, designed to provoke, no, here's my question. Let me ask you a question. And the question, because you raised it earlier about proportion. I honestly don't know what the proportionate response is. I honestly don't. I don't. I've been watching the airstrikes this week thinking...
So what's your question?
Well, I would ask you, if you were Israel, what would you...
If I was Israel.
If you were Israel and that had happened to you, what would you think would be the appropriate way for the country to respond?
I would do exactly like Israel did, kill as many people as possible since the world is letting me do it. I mean, I can do it because I can. Go on and on and on and on.
No, but you don't need to, because in a way you're preaching to the choir. I've followed this crisis.
Oh no, you're not preaching. So the thing is, like,
in the sense that I know that what you're saying has validity. Of course,
Piers. By the way, Piers. I am at a disadvantage here. I can hear you. I cannot see you. I am in a claustrophobic room, and so please cut me some slack and don't interrupt me and interrupt my points.
Sure.
So, because this has to be fair.
Understand.
Because if you want to only hear your opinion, I can just condemn Hamas and go home. I can do that. So, do you want to do that, or do you have a much more nuanced conversation?
No, I absolutely want to have a nuanced conversation. I wasn't aware I was interrupting you. I thought I was letting you speak.
Amazing. So I would say I really applaud Israel for doing one thing that no military force in the world does. Because I heard Ben Shapiro and I heard Ron DeSantis, and they said Israel is the only military force in the world that warns civilians before bombing them. I mean, how fucking cute. That is so nice of them.
You said that the U.S. should impose sanctions against Israel, but you just heard folks from opposite sides of the aisle there, giving uncompromising support for Israel. Are Israel's interests much in line with the United States, much more so than Hamas?
Oh, they're very much more in line with the United States' interests. The United States' interests, friends and enemies in the region, and Israel becomes the arm of the United States foreign policy in the region, which is why they have unequivocal, unwavering support of Israel. And quite frankly, supporting Israel as an American politician is like kissing a baby. It's the safe to treat Gaza very differently. That's the point.
Just wrong.
Alan?
Just wrong. That's just wrong. Israel ended its occupation completely in 2005.
That's untrue.
And between 2005 and 2007.
That's disingenuous.
No, it's absolutely true.
Well, let me respond. Hang on, Alan. Why is it not true? Why is it not true?
It's not true. It's not true because there are international standards for occupation. They still control electromagnetic space, the airspace, the naval space, the population registry. Every single measure of occupation they meet, they satisfy all the conditions for occupation.
According to the United States government, Israel occupies Gaza.
Exactly.
Well, no, we're not talking about now. We're talking about 205, 207. And by the way, if that was the policy, then we'll never get a two-state solution, because Israel will always have to have some military presence in the West Bank as a security border. That is an unconditional requirement for Israel's success. Both of your speakers have very short memories. They forget that in 2000-2001, Israel offered to end the occupation, to create a two-state solution. Arafat said no. In 2007, Olmert offered to end the occupation, create a two-state solution. Abbas did not respond. You have to remember that Israel has, since 1948, favored the two-state solution.
I want that
but Alan, today,
no.
Alan,
Go ahead, Peter.
2 weeks ago.
No.
Few weeks. I see a country that wants peace but doesn't give its population freedom. Because for me, peace and freedom are interchangeable. If you want peace, then you have to give the other group of people their freedom. Just like if you want freedom, you need peace. For me, I see a group of people that has been suffering psychologically, economically, and physically.
I wonder how you feel about what you've seen in terms of the last few weeks and the sort of levels of aggression that some young Palestinians are prepared to bring to the field, if you like, now.
I hope it's not about any desperation, it's about religion, basically. We see people, Israeli Arabs, that has families, that has everything, that has children and have degrees in university, yet they taking a knife and stabbing innocent people in the name of Al-Aqsa, in the name of Islam. Now,
And I feel like that's the gap we need to address. You know, every human being can love one another. Everybody wants to live, laugh, and love. But you need to start speaking to the other side. And when there's a wall separating two groups of people, you can't speak to the other side.
Okay, Raful, I'm going to have to stop it there. Thomas, sorry to cut you short on that one, but thank you both very much indeed for your contributions to a debate. I'm just being told, actually, I think we've got a few pictures of the latest stabbing in East Jerusalem, if I'm right.
Do you think that is? Well, when it comes to the Muslim world, obviously, you know, the vast majority of Muslims living in Muslim countries have a strong faith.
Why? How does that happen?
Well, because they believe in the Quran, they believe the Prophet is the messenger of Allah. Obviously, from a very young age, they're taught a certain way, and when they become adults, they take conscious decisions. But yeah, Islam is something that penetrates the hearts of Muslims all over the world.
But why? I don't understand why. There's no proof there is a God. I don't understand why any of these religions get so, you know, the Christians during the Crusades went mad.
Who made that chair you're sitting on, James? Who made the sun, the sea, and the stars? You know,
are you telling me God made the chair I'm sitting on?
No, what I'm saying is that someone made it, right? So how did the world get here? The world got here because who made it?
I'm told the chair was made in China, which has nothing to do with it really anyway. But yeah, but you can't prove there's a God. And listen, I've had radical Christians call me up about this, but the whole thing is that the current problems in the world, particularly in the Middle East at the moment, are caused by people arguing about their religions. And why can't religion, if there is a God, if there's a God, why isn't the God actually stopping these horrendous scenes of children and women being brutalized and murdered? Why isn't that happening?
I think atheists are the biggest slaughterers of.
עד להשגת כל המטרות שהצבנו, חיסול החמאס, שחרור חטופינו והסרת האיום מעזה.
Well, should the US now back calls for a ceasefire, and could Israel face sanctions for the scale of its response on October the 7th for that?
Well, as you know, I've called for Netanyahu and the IDF to be brought before the ICC, the International Criminal Court, Articles 6, 7, and 8, crime of genocide, crime against humanity, and war crime. And what I mean by that is we need to live in a world.
Hamas has a specific strategy of trying to kill as many Israeli civilians as they can, as they did on October 7th, and trying to get as many of their own civilians killed, which they do by hiding in tunnels under populated areas. Faces them because she knows that Hamas, again, is responsible for their deaths, because Hamas has used every kind of subterfuge to trap Israeli soldiers.
Let me go to
fake surrenders and suicide
Let me bring back in Cornel West. Cornel West, the moral conundrum here for many people is that what happened on October the 7th was utterly horrific, an appalling terrorist attack on mostly civilian, innocent people.
These are precious human beings. And when you have Eugene say they've only killed Hamas, they killed 2 Christian women in front of a church, a mother and a grandmother. You mean almost 8,000 children are being shielded by Hamas? You really believe the world is going to think that's serious? These justifications are as weak as pre-sweetened Kool-Aid when we see the massive suffering of precious Palestinians who are innocent.
I fully understand it, and I blame it 100% on Hamas, which uses children as human shields. It has a strategy. Its supporters call it the CNN strategy. I'm more direct. I call it the dead baby strategy. What Hamas does is they kill as many Israeli Jews as possible, knowing that Israel is going to have to respond by going after their commanders, their tunnels, and their rockets. And so they hide their commanders, their tunnels, and their rockets among babies and children and civilians. And
I think there's a bigger question here as far as context is concerned, which is that the single biggest terrorist organization in all of Palestine and Israel is known as the Israeli government. And the military wing of this terrorist organization, which is Orwellianly named the Defense Forces of Israel, has engaged in massive war crimes for decade after decade against Palestinians, engaging in the mass killing of Palestinian civilians.
Let me get Omar.
Feeding hungry people.
Omar, I mean, do you believe there's any future for Gaza that involves Hamas at this stage?
I think that's unavoidable. I mean, honestly, just the onslaught of untruths from Alan Dershowitz. I mean, the only person who has less regard for truth than Donald Trump is perhaps Dershowitz, and it's hard to know where to begin to respond to all of it.
On October 7th, Israel cannot put down its arms, because we know what Hamas did on the 7th, they would have done to every Israeli if they had the ability to do that. Okay. And that's why Israel must rid itself of Hamas. And that will benefit the world, and that will benefit the Palestinians, and that will lead to a two-state solution, which is not what my distinguished opponents want.
The two-state solution argument is nonsense. Throughout the entire so-called peace process, when Israel was pretending to be engaged in a peace process, support for Palestinian violence simply disappeared. And in spite of that, Israeli land theft continued.
Humble, because there's a million people who can do it, but like, I'm not a politician, I'm a comedian. I come here to tell some of my opinions, but the thing is, you want to put me and you use that, and you give me, I'm sorry to say, butchered political information and numbers that doesn't say anything.
Stats are really butchered in political But it's interesting how you have all the solutions for Israel, but you have no solutions for Gaza or Hamas. Very interesting. Very interesting how you can critique everything that's going on in Israel. Yes, they do have some things they need to rectify. Just like the United States, just like any democracy. You've got all the answers there, boss. When I said, what do they do over here in Gaza? What do they do? I have no idea. I'm just a comedian. Don't listen to me. So which one is it? You either know your shit or you're actually just...
So what was your question? What's the solution for Israel?
So what's the solution?
I said the Israel
for
take
Gaza?
back the land. For Gaza, how about you stop the killing and then we can talk?
Okay, so let's say we do that.
Okay.
So here's what I believe. I think we need to demilitarize Gaza. We need to de-radicalize, because they're the leading...
How are you going to de-radicalize? How do you do that?
Well, maybe let's stop.
So how about
stop summer schools where they teach about jihad and they start playing football and soccer.
How about the religious schools in Israel that actually tell people that we should kill all Arabs? And these videos are...
You know all those Jews that are running around bombing everywhere around the world? No, it doesn't fucking exist. It's only in Islam.
Oh, really? But what about the Jews killing the Palestinians inside?
I'm talking about around the world. If I said there was
we're bad people. We're bad people. Take us out.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, we're very hot.
Okay, what I'm saying is they need to...
religion. We are a terrorist religion. Take it out.
You said it. Your words.
Let's do it.
You said it. Your words.
Yeah.
Your words.
Let's do it. I mean, like,
your words.
This is like you have a really interesting outlook for people who look like me.